The following takes place between... Well, actually, the following was recorded just after Bill Gates had said that thing about supporting the FBI, and just before he said that thing about, I didn't really say that exactly, sort of, kind of bit. Interestingly, we're not surprised. Listen on to find out why. Hello, this is MacNN. One more thing with me, William Gallagher, and him, Malcolm Owen. Hello, Malcolm.
Hello.
And the ever-present spectre of the FBI, presumably. This is the ongoing story about the FBI v. Apple. That's actually probably the case name, isn't it? It's going to be quoted in law precedent for years to come. FBI v. Apple Incorporated. Because this is moving quite quickly, once again, one more thing wants to delve behind one little segment of the story, and actually particularly this bit. Bill Gates, of Microsoft, I suppose, has sided with the FBI against Apple. Malcolm, do you know what he's been saying?
Well, he's spoken to, of all people, the Financial Times, rather than a technology blog or anything else like that. You know, Financial Times, yeah.
It seems appropriate to me, actually, given Bill Gates. I've always seen him as more of a businessman than a technology person, but that's just me. What's he been telling the FT?
Okay, right, okay. He has said, quote, "This is a specific case where the government is asking for access to information. They are not asking for some general thing. They're asking for a particular case." Unfortunately, he said that before. Apparently, the government wants to get data from 12 other iPhones in 12 other criminal cases. Yes. So he said that before then. So...
yeah. I was quite amused by that, actually, in a way, because here are you and I are conscious that things are passing by, and here's Bill Gates, you know, planting a flag and also missing that things move on. I have a problem with Bill Gates. He created Windows, but also just throughout time, he's obviously a cleverer man than I am, but I think he thinks very politically and very strategically. And I have an example of this. He actually said, we run an Apple history series on MacNN.com, and by chance this week I read a lovely quote about, this is due back in 1995 when the US Supreme Court finally said, nuts to you, Apple, Microsoft's fine with Windows. That was... February 1995, and it was all about Windows 3.1 at the time, and Windows 95 was about to come out. But I found a quote that was very relevant to this whole situation, and it was this: imagine the disincentive to software development if, after months of work, another company could come along and copy your work and market it under its own name. Without legal restraints on such copying, companies like Apple could not afford to advance the state of the art. Now, I think that's an interesting point. I think it's true, but I love the fact that it was said in 1983 by Bill Gates at the same time he was copying the Mac OS for Windows. And if I haven't, you did a good impersonation of his voice now, maybe a bit more English, a bit more rich. If you'd like to hear what Bill Gates sounded like when he said that, it was pretty much like this.
Well, we'll be selling our software independently. So the key thing is that Apple gets a lot of consistent standard machines out there quickly.
(1983), Bill Gates on the Macintosh dating game. I don't know why they did that. He was with Lotus, he was with Steve Jobs. They were young. But they were still, you know, piling ahead with Windows at the time. So what I think Bill Gates made a very shrewd and clever comment in 1983. I think he is trying to make a shrewd and clever comment now in 2016, but he's more obviously missed the boat because of the lead time between when he was asked and when we learnt about it. I've got to say, I'm really interested in lead times, because I used to think that was gone. I worked on print magazines where sometimes you were planning several months in advance and an interview would take weeks to come. I worked on a magazine called PC Direct, and I wrote the back page that profiled a company. It was known as the curse of PC Direct, because 7 times between interviewing them and the issue coming out, those companies went bust. Here we are, though, up-to-date modern news cycle, everything happening now. But as well as Bill Gates missing this basic proof that what he's saying is nonsense, Fortune magazine had an excellent interview with Tim Cook, and it was clearly done probably about an hour before all this broke, because there isn't a word about the FBI. There is instead, not much more of a word, about the Apple car. Malcolm, have you been following Apple car dumb? Are you actually, do you drive? Are you holding off driving until there is an Apple car?
I wouldn't say holding off driving until there's an Apple car. I'm just not a driver. I understand the concept of how a car works, and I have had lessons. It's just I've never really got to the point where I've particularly want to actually drive.
I actually gave up a car when I got my first book contract. I couldn't afford the time it took to drive to a particular job, so I'd get the train and I'd write on the way. And after about a month, maybe 2 months of doing that, when I'd finished the draft of the book, I discovered I'd saved £1,000 in petrol. And from that, I could not make myself spend that money anymore, so I just carried on doing trains. Actually, I'm sure the trains added up as well, but let's not go there. Tim Cook says they may not be going there with the Apple car. Now, as ever, I think he actually starts off by saying, yeah, I'm not going to talk much about that. But he does talk about the fact that Apple regularly looks at all sorts of technology. And I think maybe the key thing is, when we start spending large amounts of money, we're committed at that point. But, brackets presumably up to then, we explore things with teams of people, and that's part of being curious. Oh no, there's a bit more about the money thing. Once we start spending gobs of money, like when we start spending on tooling and things, then we're committed. I love that Tim Cook says gobs. I presume in the context he means a lot, whereas you and I, Malcolm, will know that British slang is your mouth. So he was talking with his gob about spending gobs. But it sounds like they haven't done it yet. Now, he could be lying. He could be Bill Gatesing and just saying a strategically sensible thing to do. But it does sound like he's trying to cool the waters a little bit on the Apple car. Should we just think, yeah, whatever, let's have an Apple ring or an Apple spaceship first? Are you disappointed by what he's saying?
I think the key thing about the Apple car is, if you treat it like any other major breakthrough Apple product or anything they basically created, like the iPhone, like the iPad and so on, they typically put an awful lot of work into something before actually making it publicly viewable or even going vaguely close. And you usually hear rumours of this product being created for what seems like centuries before Apple actually announces it. We are getting the rumours, but considering that the manufacturing process of a car is far and above in terms of space, in terms of actual cost to produce compared to an iPhone, an iPad, or any other handheld device. If Apple was going to invest in the tools and production of making a car, we certainly would have heard about it, because those are big things to do. We remember, when Tesla came out and said, yeah, we're going to be making a battery mega factory so we can make batteries for our cars. And that's just for batteries, and that's a huge project. Even if Tesla didn't announce it, just the sheer size of the project meant that someone would be going, hey, we've got to investigate this. What is this about? And there'd still be stories coming out about it. If Apple is indeed tooling up to go into production of a car, we certainly haven't heard any major purchases of land, any major structures being constructed that relate to car manufacturing.
I know you're right. I'm just still amazed at the idea that a car can be a bigger development deal than something like the iPad or the iPhone, which seem to me to require so many new technologies and so much precision work. Whereas a car, here's an engine, here's some wheels, tell me about the radio, and we're done.
There's a few other things that a car needs.
Okay, brakes. Give you brakes.
Well, yeah, basically, in comparison to an iPad, let's say an iPad has to go through various things to make sure it doesn't kill the user by exploding or by irradiating their brains using the radios or other things. With a car, you've got other safety things to take into account. For example, when you're hitting the car against another car. And then you've got whatever new technologies Apple puts in, because you know full well that if they were to create a car and to put it on the market, you're not going to have a car that is simply you sit in and you drive around with not much happening in terms of technology. You know that they're going to be putting in something, maybe not necessarily this, but something along the lines of it driving for you, or it having some element of driver assists. And that on its own is going to be a legal and logistical nightmare to put into practice and actually sell to people. I mean, Google has their car, and that has problems.
Sooner or later, a Google or any kind of automated car is going to kill someone. It's just the way it is. And I'm very curious to see how that plays out in reception and in the legal case of it. Whose fault is it? And that kind of thing. It's going to be interesting, I think.
I'm going to love the day when I get in a car, a self-driving car, and I'm going to have to read the EULA.
I had to think what that was for a minute. Yes.
Sorry,
before you could switch on the steering wheel.
Yeah, well, for those not playing at home, the EULA, End User License Agreement.
Isn't EULA a great name for a car? Though?
The EULA.
The Apple EULA.
It sounds like a dessert from Germany.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, interesting. Do you know, I've just got this funny feeling that cars that do things for you, we've had this idea before.
Michael.
Yeah, Kit?
C is beyond your grasp, and D is beyond your vision.
I didn't know you had perfect pitch.
It's a cross I have to bear.
You do it so well.
Thank you.
De nada.
Speaking of television, that was Kit in Knight Rider, of course. What you're saying about us knowing of rumours of things going on, again, I know you're right, and it was absolutely true with the Apple Watch, it was true with the iPad. I think it was true with the iPhone. I can't really remember that far back. For as long as time has existed, though, there has been rumour that Apple will do a television set, and that's not happened. So what happened there? Were the rumours wrong, or did Apple just think, nah, whatever?
I have no idea what happened to the Apple TV. It could possibly be... Sorry, to the Apple Television, not Apple TV. I do apologise. It could be that they're looking at the Apple TV itself and thinking, that'll do. Someone else can make the screen. We're out. We don't have to worry about that at all. It's a difficult thing. I mean, it could be a rumour that's been just held up by sheer willpower of Gene Munster alone during those conference calls until he gave up on it.
The legend that is Gene Munster, analyst.
It could have been an entire practical joke against this one analyst. I don't know. But yeah, Apple has the Apple TV set-top box, or the smart TV functionality for all intents and purposes. So it's not an immediate jump to think that they can slap a screen on that and sell it. I mean, they make these devices which have screens on them. I think they're called iMacs. Have you heard of them?
No.
No, you never heard of iMacs?
No. I've heard of the iBicycle, but that's another story. Brackets, see Apple history at MacNN.com.
So, slapping a screen on an Apple TV kind of makes sense, but they've never actually got to that point, purely because, well, we don't officially know, but it's probably because you've got so many other things to deal with, like having to deal with other devices connecting to the TV and having to manage the inputs from that, and any sort of technological stuff that goes with it, having to deal with the cable companies and satellite companies if necessary, because if they're going to be making a TV with an Apple TV slapped onto it, you're going to expect them to do something special again.
Have you used an Apple TV, the current set-top box?
No, I haven't seen the current one. I've seen the previous generation.
Yeah, that's what I have. MacNN managing editor Mike Wortherly talked me into trying Apple TV, I think about 2 months before the current one came out, and I really like it. I like it enough that I'm not actually tempted to go to the new 4th generation one. But what you're saying about connecting other devices and things, it's a right pain on a TV set. I'm trying to persuade my wife Angela that there's all this great stuff on Apple TV, and I've finally done it. But whenever either of us wants to watch something, we have to find the TV remote control, change its input to a different HDMI one, and then start Apple TV. And that was a big barrier, particularly for her when she wasn't that fussed about what was there. Now we're actually addicted with watching The Good Wife alternating with Lie to Me most nights through Netflix on Apple TV, and we're both hooked. But it took a step to get us there. And yeah, I would expect an Apple device to go, oh right, you've switched on that, let's show you this. You switched on Sky, you must want that. Do something a bit more intelligent than our TV set does at the moment. But this is going off into halfway between what Apple hasn't done, what Apple has done, and what it might do in the middle. There are things it's actually done this week, actual news. It's just yet more beta releases. I do have some thoughts about one of them. But have you kept up with what beta software Apple has pushed out all at once this week?
Well, all 4 of the main operating systems that Apple works on have now got new developer betas. So you've got OS 10, 10, 11.4, iOS 9.3, watchOS 2.2, and tvOS 9.2. Which is now able to be tried out by developers, which is reassuring. The OS 10 beta basically includes a couple of changes to the Notes app, so you can now import from text files quite frankly, a lot better than it did previously. You're looking at the ability to share live photos to social media through the Messages app. There's also some changes to Night Shift and 3D Touch as well. watchOS, you're looking at being able to pair multiple Apple Watches to a single device, which is kind of nice if you happen to own multiple Apple Watches and only one iPhone.
Actually, can I just stop you on that one? Why would one any? I know we've talked about this before, but now it's real, and it's it's in the beta, developer beta, so it'll be in proper people's hands soon. Why would I want to pair multiple Apple Watches to
Let's say
one
you
iPhone?
are a fashionable man about town, and you need to have an Apple Watch that suits every occasion. So, for example, if you have the rose gold, and you have the spray-painted bright pink, and you have the giant red one, and so on. I forget what colours Apple Watches are available in. But let's say if you have multiple Apple Watches to suit multiple different fashion senses that you have. If you have a need to dress up smartly, you might need one Apple Watch colour. If you need to dress less smartly, you may want to go for another one. If you're going out on a trip and you want to make sure that you can still tell the time, then you get something that is not going to break if you smack it into a wall.
Well, I see your point there. Actually, I like to blend when I'm getting dressed for the evening, and a watch would make sense suddenly. So, thank you, Apple. I appreciate them sorting that out for me. Can't imagine there's anybody else wants it, but for me, thank you. So that's iOS. There's also Apple TV OS or something like that. Anything exciting there?
Let's see. Changes to the redesigned app switcher, folder support.
Oh, folder support. Yes.
Yeah, tvOS is
last.
more slight changes as opposed to anything major. And then there's iOS, which I believe you should handle.
Yes, but no, I just want to get folders in the Apple TV. I just want to say booyah, okay? You do have no idea how long I've been waiting for folders on Apple TV. Okay, I'm actually just kind of putting off talking about iOS 9.3. How can I put it off even longer? Let's be clear, this is the developer beta release. So if a normal, sensible person picks up their iPhone today, they're not going to see this yet, but they will soon. And I suppose things can change radically between this stage of beta and public release, but the odds are if it's here, it's going to be there. And one of the arguably good things is this thing we've talked about before of the night shift, which changes the colour of your iPhone throughout the day, so that at the end of the day, instead of blearily switching on and getting this blast of cold bluish white light in your face, you get a muted brown restful thing. I said before, hate it. I now have to say, kind of getting used to it. I forgot I'd left it switched on. It was only when I went from my iPhone to my iPad and then saw the iPad didn't have it on. Okay, so you get used to it and it is restful, but it still looks just muddy and horrible and things. Okay, it's all about aesthetics with me, clearly. I told you I blend when I dress. I like exactly the right highlight in my face when I switch on my iPhone. Thinking of other things that I always see you as the games guy, and you occasionally dispute this with me, but compared to me, you're a games expert. There are things you also know. I mean, there's so many things you know that I don't, but there's one in particular that I always think of with you, and that is what's going on right now with Mobile World Congress. Because they don't have any iPhones there, I mentally switch off. But apparently this year, maybe not in volume, but in quality, there are one or two things that are genuinely interesting. Is that true?
There is, actually. Generally speaking, when we've previously reported on Mobile World Congress, it's mostly fitted under the Electronista banner as opposed to MacNN. Mostly because when you think of Mobile World Congress, you're thinking Android smartphones, accessories that go with said Android smartphones, and weird things that you look at and you think no one's really going to buy that, and way too many cases and accessories like that. The key things to have come out, Samsung revealed their latest flagship, which is have a guess what it is. The previous one was called the Galaxy S6, so what's the new one called?
Galaxy 7?
Oh, close. Galaxy S7.
Oh, you're so near. And yet I understand. When you were saying these strange things that people wouldn't buy, I'm thinking, Android phones. Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah, the list of things it has, it's pretty what you'd expect. So it's got Android 6.0, which is Marshmallow. It's got TouchWiz, which is Samsung's overlay thing. Looking at a 5.1-inch Quad HD Super AMOLED display. There's an Edge version, which has the screen going around the edges, which is slightly larger. It's 5.5 inches. 4 gig of RAM, a Snapdragon 820 processor, 32 gigs of storage with the return of the microSD card support, which is nice. Rear 12 megapixel camera, front 5 megapixel, and so on and so forth. You could dunk it in water. That's basically it. It's got an always-on screen as well, which is the biggest thing that it now has. So you can now check your phone's time without having to worry about having to actually turn on the screen and using way too much power.
Let's not make that thingy of the week then. But actually, having said that, let's move on to the bit I swear I look forward to most every week. What in the world you're going to come up with as your thingy of the week? Thingy being, last time you had a film, The Martian. We've had people before. Products, obviously, services, application sites, things that are interesting or important to you this week. And Malcolm, what is it this time?
It's a public service announcement.
Okay.
We are now most of the way through February, so the first wave of holidays or vacations is going to be coming up. So you're going to have the Easter holidays and people going off for weekends away roughly around now. Now winter is starting to, thaw out. And this was brought up by a family member of mine who wanted to make sure that they could use their phone abroad, but they wanted to use a different SIM card to the one that came with the phone. Now, generally speaking, when you get a phone nowadays from your carrier, you're going to get it. It depends on the carrier whether it's locked or not, but if it's a locked phone, you basically can only use that carrier's SIM. If you have an unlocked phone, you could put any SIM in there, which is handy if you go abroad. Because if you go abroad, what you do is you pick up a local SIM card for a prepaid one, you put it into your phone, and you suddenly have a local number that you can use without nosebleed-worthy mobile phone charges while you're abroad. So the public service announcement here is check with your carrier to make sure that your phone is unlocked before you go abroad. And when I say before, I mean try a couple of weeks before you go abroad. My previous experience in a call centre has led me to believe that sometimes the process of getting the phone unlocked can take maybe a few weeks in some cases, but usually at most 72 hours. So do it now rather than 10 minutes before you get on the plane.
Cool. All right. I like that. That's a new Think of it. I don't know how you keep finding new forms for Think of the Week when mine are always pretty much the same. They are an application or maybe some hardware for it. This week, my Think of the Week is actually a provisional Think of the Week. It's called Better Touch Tool. It's an app for Macs, particularly Macs with its trackpads, and I've had it on my Mac for 2 years. It's only become this week that I've actually started really using it because it used to be free and now you have to pay for it. So I read about it coming out for it, and it reminded me it was there. I checked, I had it. And what it does is that you add extra little gestures, I suppose. I do a lot more now split screen work with OS X, El Capitan. And with this, I can flick a couple of fingers on an app and it moves it to the left split screen or to the right, rather than just hunting down that green button, holding and waiting stuff. Small thing, but mine own, and I'm terribly into it. Except I got so into it, I added something else, and now whenever I try that, something conflicts somewhere. So I loved it. I think I'll love it again, but this minute, I think I need to actually pay for it and understand what it does. But that's what I'll be doing. Oh, hey, so it might actually be next week's fully fledged Thingy of the Week. That'd be a little bit new. But, listen, you've been talking sense. I've been at least talking, but my mind is going back to squeaky Bill Gates from 1983, and the point we were making about the fact that his current announcement about being on the FBI side, I would suggest is business strategy more than necessarily technology related. Just to end off this week, I want you to listen to some of Bill Gates praising the Apple Macintosh, and then at the end, see if there's a little clue why he's doing that. Speech next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Well, to create a new standard, it takes something that's not just a little bit different. It takes something that's really new and really captures people's imagination. And the Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard. My name is Bill Gates. I'm chairman of Microsoft. And during 1984, Microsoft expects to get half of its revenues from Macintosh software.